EPA, we always knew that job creation was a three-headed monster. It was taxes, it was regulation, and it was balancing the books and companies, and the government would be the budget. And all three on the federal level are completely out of whack. So we shouldn't come as any surprise that job creation has been anemic. We've been trickling along at a 2% plus barely growth rate per year when entitlements are growing at the clip of 5% a year. We have an $18 trillion national debt. We have regulations that are literally putting companies out of business. And we have an onerous tax code that not even my CPA colleagues can understand. And they have to hire expensive tax attorneys to figure it out. So those three things, in short, are the answer to getting job creation back on track. A balanced budget amendment is absolutely imperative. It is absolutely imperative. It needs to be put at the forefront, in addition to creating a fair tax system and killing any Obama-era job-killing regulations.
Andy Warren?
You're getting locker room answers here tonight. We can go into these, but 1 minute doesn't give you much. One thing we can do is get rid of the EPA standards and things. In the first 6 years of Obamacare, it cost $160 billion additional dollars from EPA a year because of the Obamacare. 2 million people lost their job because of Obamacare. I mean, the Obama administration was that. 2 million people lost their job because of Obamacare. One of the things that we need to do is teach or train people for jobs that exist. You don't have to go to college, first of all. It's absurd the cost that they get rid of half of the staff in the colleges, and we'll be doing some at a lower cost. But we ought to be encouraging kids to go to vocational school, go to tech schools, go to train the people for the jobs that exist. I don't care to have a Greek philosophy major. So that's one thing. Balancing the budget, and I'll just end with this. The national debt, you know how bad this is? We keep talking trillions, billions, and it doesn't mean a heck of a lot. Let me put it to you this way. If your family spent the way the national government spends, I'll tell you that. I'll work that into another answer.
Hold the microphone, maybe you can work into this one. What form of tax reform, if any, would you support?
Okay. Before we get to tax reform, we have to have an income. And let me give you an example. If we translated the American family's income, the median income is $54,000 a year. The American family spends, we're spending like the government does in that proportion. American family, if they spent $61,000 a year, you make 54, you spend 61,000, and so you have 7,000 that you put on your credit card that goes on a debt of 300,000. That's what it would mean for a family. That's what the government does all the time. That's got to stop. That's insane because those thousands are trillions. And we can't do that. But the tax that I think, how many people? No, he's a CPA. I'm not going to ask him. I haven't done our taxes for 25 years. I can't read the thing. It's 3,000 pages to do taxes. That's absurd. I am in favor of changing the tax. I'd start with a flat tax. Make it some proportional. I know there's things, 1 minute, we're not going to have an economics lesson in 1 minute, but it's got to change. Anything that's 3,000 pages long, I'm against.
You're over your minute already. I'm afraid you're going to go out to the parking lot. You're walking into the audience there, Brian.
Like I said, the tax code is absolutely absurd, and even tax professionals and people in the industry, it's ridiculous for us. But as far as job creation, the first thing I'd like to tackle is a corporate tax rate. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the developed world. It is far in excess of what it should be. And you have companies, great American companies like, Apple, for example, although I'm not really happy with Apple right now, coming from the FBI, but great American company like Apple, overwhelming majority of their employees are over in China. Why is that? Because they can make more money over in China. This is common sense. I don't understand why we can't figure out a tax scheme, especially on the corporate side, that encourages businesses to stay here and do business here and to create jobs here.
Roger Mark?
Well, we're back to the old Nancy Reagan phrase, just say no to spending. We had the omnibus bill, $1.1 trillion. I met with Congressman Fitzpatrick before he voted for the bill. And he said, I'm going to push back. I'm not going to vote for it. And then he voted for it. I said, what are you thinking? What was only $800 billion? I'm like, listen to yourself. The spending has to stop. the taxes have to come under control. It's not any kind of one silver bullet to fixing this. But I think the spending has to stop with some absolutely horrendous spending. The tax has to come under control as far as bringing jobs back into the United States. We're not asking the government to create jobs. That's a statement that I had hair when I first heard that one. All right, that's something I don't want to hear. The government does not create jobs. Private industry creates the jobs. Let's get people back in here that can flourish in their private industry without being taxed to death.
Doctor, hold on to the mic, and we'll ask you about, is there any form of the war on drugs, any kind of reform on the war of drugs we ought to be thinking about? And would you support legalizing marijuana?
Two big questions in 1 minute. I'll jump to the second part. No, I would not support legalization. I think that is just a rabbit hole that we would go down and never recover from. As far as the war on drugs, in going from north to south in this county and shaking hands from north to south, getting the signatures, and I appreciate everybody that's been in this room that's also signed my petitions. The Bucks County, this 8th district, has a serious heroin epidemic in the southern part of the county. In meeting with the police chiefs, the emergency service workers, they are getting swamped and overwhelmed, and no one's got their back. I think that we need to pay more attention to strengthening the laws, protecting the backs of these police and law enforcement people that do not have our backs right now, if you listen to them. And let the healthcare system try to recover a little bit from where the mess we're in right now as well. I think it's not any one silver bullet. It's a very complex issue. There are a lot of mental health laws out there and regulations that can also be tweaked. And of course, I have the skill set behind that, being in this field for over 30 years. But there's more to it than that.
Brian?
I don't even know where to begin answering this question in 60 seconds. I prosecuted many a drug dealer, including in this district and in Virginia when I was a federal prosecutor down there, and it is an unbelievably complicated problem. We have very heavy hits on the drug side on the federal guidelines, which hasn't quite worked. I support, certainly education. I think that as far as the drug problem we have here, and as Dr. Dorley mentioned, the heroin epidemic, economics and education are two big components of that, especially education. I'm going to be going to Audi. It's a treatment center in a few weeks to get more of an inside view on the heroin epidemic as it specifically pertains to Bucks County. It's a tragedy. I think we all know that. Education is a big key component to that, and it's really a community effort to get on top of that problem.
Marijuana?
I don't support legalizing marijuana for a number of reasons. We'll see how, it's going to be interesting because the way our country was set up, as we all know, the states were sort of set up as experimentation grounds, and we're going to see how it plays out in Colorado and Washington State and elsewhere. I think it's a mistake based on people I know in law enforcement, people I know in the medical community. That would not be a wise move for our country to do that.
Andy Warren?
In spite of the success that Colorado is having with legalized marijuana, I am opposed to legalized marijuana. Ask the states around Colorado how successful they think it is. That's not successful. Saturday, I went to the Township Supervisors Association meeting because they had a panel on heroin, and I wanted to hear what the panel said. Member in the audience talked about that. Did the panel? It was excellent. We have an issue, bar none, of drugs right here in River City. I'm going to tell you how close it is. Elaine, my wife, volunteers at St. Mary. The week before last, she's up on the where people are really, really sick. One of the people that she was working with spent the whole time in the fetal position. She was a 22-year-old young woman who was so high on drugs, she was in the fetal position the whole time. That's 1/2 mile from where I live. We have a drug problem, bar none. Heroin's too easy. I learned that it starts in our medicine cabinets, right here. Absolutely, and I said no to marijuana.
All right, yeah. And again, we're kind of compressing some of these questions. A couple of things we'll definitely